So um, really, when we're talking about expectations, I want to talk about your expectations when you walk into a restaurant, right? Now, remember that when we eat, we use all five senses, right? We see what we're going to eat or where we're going to eat. We touch, are the tables sticky? Is it clean? We smell. Do the floors smell good? Can you smell the drains in the kitchens? Do you smell fresh cooked food? And then, we hear what's going on. Is it chaotic? And then finally we taste food, right? So let's talk about this as far as it pertains to food safety, our expectations of food safety. So if we walk into a restaurant and it doesn't immediately smell like what we want it to smell like, is that going to want us to stay and eat there? Probably not. If it doesn't look the way we want it to look, if there's plates and napkins and food all over the floor, what are our thoughts going to be? Our thoughts are going to be, wow, the people who work here really don't care about food safety. They don't care about guest experiences, and I'm not going to want to stay and eat there, right? And then finally, if the tables are sticky or if the floor is sticky, that's really going to set off a lot of alarm bells for me as far as food safety, right? Number one, it's not going to be pleasant to eat there, but also if they can't wipe off tables and clean floors and ensure that things are picked up and tables are cleared and that it smells good, then what is the food going to be? Right? So we have to think about our expectations, because kids' expectations are just as much, if not more, than our expectations, right? So thinking about that as we go through food safety, we don't want to just talk about the food. We want to kind of talk about the whole experience and how just the smallest things have a huge impact on how we perceive the quality and cleanliness of the space. Okay, so get going here. Okay, so let's start with foodborne illness. Okay, I know when I teach these summer classes, I hear a lot of horror stories about foodborne illness, right? And if you have gone to a restaurant and had a bad meal and been so sick afterwards, what is your next course of action? When it has happened to me personally, I am almost immediately on the phone with the health department, right? Just because as I'm throwing up my guts and being bedridden, I don't want this to happen to someone else, right? And with most of us eating out, this is a restaurant's going to have hundreds of customers a day. So I'm also going to tell all my friends about my terrible experience, so none of them have to experience it as well, right? So what has happened? We have totally ruined the reputation of that restaurant, right? Sometimes rightfully so, right? Hopefully you know exactly where you got foodborne illness, but bad news travels fast. Okay, now I want for you to imagine just for a second that in your restaurant, your school restaurant, that unfortunately one of your children has gotten foodborne illness. What happens? What is the reaction from the community? Well, you're probably showing up on the evening news, right? Local child nutrition workers try to kill children. We don't want that, right? We absolutely don't want that at all. So we're going to talk about some ways to combat that. Another thing that would happen in your kitchens is you'd probably get shut down really quickly, and then your participation would tank, and you'd probably totally have to rebrand, and it would take years, right? Also, there are the lawsuits, right? You can definitely sue people over getting foodborne illness because it's negligence. So foodborne illness costs the US economy more than $15.6 billion a year. That is crazy. Think about how many bridges could be restored with that. Am I right? So $15.6 billion. Now, how do we keep from getting into this predicament where we have given somebody a foodborne illness. There are several tiny little steps that we can take to ensure that we are serving the safest food possible. We're going to talk about some of these, okay? But first, let's talk about the statistics, right? I love a good infographic. So, foodborne illness is definitely a thing, right? It causes people a lot of distress. It can cause permanent damage sometimes and even death, right? It is a very serious thing, okay? And it affects a lot of the demographic we serve more harshly than others, okay? Think about who we serve: young children, elderly teachers, and then also pregnant women, because teachers are younger sometimes, especially in elementary schools, right? They're pregnant. So making sure that we are following all these very specific steps to ensure that we're serving the safest food possible, okay? Okay, let's talk about some basics. Okay, we talked about foodborne illness. Your at-risk population, so young children, older people, pregnant ladies, and then also people with comorbidities or other issues, health issues, that could very, very harshly be affected by foodborne illness. And that's when you talk about loss of life and permanent damage, okay? It all starts with purchasing and receiving and buying from reputable sources, right? If Joe Schmo pulls up his truck in the back of the restaurant with a trailer full of mushrooms, not the fun kind, but the ones that are, edible for food, and says, hey, I'll give you a great price. Here's some mushrooms. Are you going to buy it? Absolutely not. We don't know Joe Schmo, right? We don't know him at all. And we want to make sure that we are buying from reputable sources. So that's why we always buy from a Benny Keith, a US Foods, a Sixco, or a person or a company that has a reputation, because there are safety measures in place for things like recalls and different things like that. Okay. When we receive the merchandise, what is important? What are some of the most important things to do when we get that food? We need to make sure it gets put away very quickly, right? Excuse me. We want to make sure that things are the proper temperature. So we're taking temps on milks, or making sure frozen food is still frozen, inspecting boxes, making sure that no little rodent bite marks are on the boxes, making sure that the boxes don't look like they've been thawed and refrozen, all of that sort of thing. So it is on you and your staff to get that food taken care of really very quickly and inspect that food every single time. Okay. The other thing that we need to look at is produce, right? Produce is a big deal. We want kids to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. And if they're not fresh, they're not going to want to eat them, right? So making sure that when you accept that box of apples or oranges or bananas, you're opening that and making sure that it is fresh, not moldy, and has good quality, right? Because again, think of the expectations of your students, and really very much compare them to your own, right? If not more so, right? So if you going out to a restaurant that you have to eat at 5 days a week, at least 2 meals a day, expect everything to be very fresh and have high quality standards and be clean and sanitary, what do you think the kids expect? They expect the same thing, okay? Not only that, but their parents do as well, and we will definitely hear it if the parents are not happy, right? Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is time and temperature, right? So we want to talk about hot food and cold food as it pertains to time and temperature. That's why holding temperatures are so, so, so important, right? We don't want to eat every meal like we do Thanksgiving, where we throw all food safety out the window and let things sit out for like the whole entire day, which is totally disgusting, right? We want fresh food, okay? Think about having people over to your house. You don't prepare and cook thoroughly your dish that you're going to serve 5 hours before your guests get there, right? That would be a disaster. You're going to prepare it as close to the time that you're going to eat as possible. And we want to do that with the kids as well, not only from a food safety perspective, but from a quality perspective. So making sure that we have our hot boxes on and they're at a proper temp, making sure that our coolers are at proper temp, making sure that if our cold food sits out of the refrigerator for more than 4 hours, we're throwing it away. Remembering that that 4 hours is cumulative. It's not 4 hours a day. It's, you know, if you have it out for 30 minutes that first day, you only have 3.5 hours until that food is totally gone as far as a contamination standpoint. Okay. The other thing is, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but we want to take temperatures of everything, right? We want to make sure that we're cooking things thoroughly, getting the reheated items up to 165 degrees, keeping those cold items at 41 or below, and making sure that we're meeting those proper temperatures. The other thing that is a huge, or another thing that is a huge deal when it comes to food safety is cross-contamination, okay? Now a big cross-contamination no-no would be like cutting raw chicken on the same cutting board right before you're cutting cucumbers, right? Why would that be an issue? Because you're cutting raw chicken that can potentially have, you know, salmonella and all those delicious little bacteria and all delicious food illnesses, right? And then you're doing cucumber, right? And you're not usually going to cook cucumber. So we have taken that raw chicken juices and deliciousness, bacteria, you know, cesspool, and put it all over our cucumbers, right? That's a very obvious one. Let's talk about some less obvious ones, okay? Let's talk about these guys, okay? If I touch the box, if I go to the walk-in and grab a box, okay, and I take it to my workstation, and then I grab the cucumber out of the box and I immediately start cutting it, have I cross-contaminated? Yes. Yes, touching the exterior of the box, which is sat in a warehouse, been touched by an amazing amount of people. Bugs were probably all over it. You don't know where the box originated from. You don't know how old the box is. It's set in your walk-in, which we'll talk about walk-ins here in a minute. And then now you're touching it, and then you're touching the food, right? Let's talk about another cross-contamination, one of my favorites, okay? If you've done summer training with me, you'll know that I'm very passionate about this one, walk-ins, okay? Everyone knows that it gets really warm in the kitchen, right? Okay, one of my favorite places to go is the walk-in. Why? Because those gorgeous, amazing, high-powered fans blowing right on my face, cooling me down, right? But if I'm sweaty, where's my sweat going? It's going all over the food, okay? Also, any hair product or dandruff or pet hair or anything on my clothes, where is that going? All over everything in the walk-in, okay? God forbid somebody sneeze in the walk-in, don't get me started. It's amazing that any of us make it to adulthood, right? But if you sneeze in the walk-in, all those fans are carrying all that bacteria where? Onto the food. Okay, so that means if we pull those cucumbers out of the refrigerator and we wash our hands after touching the box, we touch the cucumbers with our gloves or whatever, okay, and start cutting them, what are we doing? We're cross-contaminating because we haven't washed the cucumbers, right? Okay, so that's why it's so important to think about cross-contamination as it is kind of out of the box. It's not always these blatant, crazy things like mixing raw chicken with cucumbers. It's not washing produce. It's not changing your gloves between tasks. It's wearing your gloves and touching your phone. It's wearing your gloves and touching the walk-in handle. It's, you know, touching your face. All of these things are cross-contamination, okay? And everything that I've mentioned that we touch has a lot of bacteria. Some of the naturally occurring bacteria on our skin is E. coli and staph. I don't know about you, but they're terrible and disgusting pictures of staph infections that I would encourage you not to check out unless you really want to be grossed out. But you want to make sure that we're washing, okay? I do have a question. Okay, let's see here. Do you wash them if they come individually wrapped and say ready to eat? This is a great question, okay? A lot of you will get produce that is washed beforehand and packaged, okay? If it is that, we do not want to wash it again. If we wash it again, we'll probably be introducing more bacteria into that um, item than um, than was originally there. So triple washed lettuce or different things like that, you do not want to rewash. Okay, it's a great question. That's a great question. Okay. Okay, hand washing and glove use. Again, if you've gone through any summer training with me, you'll know that I love this subject. Okay, so gloves. We want to wash our hands right before we put gloves on. Why? Gloves make our hands immediately clean, right? No, no, no. What temperature is it in those gloves? It's like a nice, juicy 110, delicious, right? Okay. And then what do our hands do in those gloves when it's 110 degrees? They sweat, right? Okay. And we just talked about naturally occurring bacteria on our skin. Okay. E. coli and staph. And bacteria don't grow one by one, right? No, no, no. They're ambitious little buggers. They multiply. Okay. So one can turn into thousands within minutes. So we have this nice, juicy bacteria soup in our gloves, right? Because we haven't washed our hands. Then we take our gloves off. And because we're in a rush, we kind of fling them off really quickly. And our hands sweat with all that lovely bacteria and juiciness goes where? Everywhere. Okay. And then because we're in a hurry, we don't wash our hands right away. So then, we pat our neighbor on the back, tell them, hey, right behind you. We touch the walk-in door handle. We touch the knife rack. We touch the can opener. We touch tables. We go get a clean pan, right? And what are we doing? We're contaminating every single thing we touch, right? So this is why it is so important to wash your hands right before we put on gloves, and then right after we take them off. The next thing I want to talk about with gloves is a lot of people have the perception that gloves, when you put them on, immediately mean that your hands are clean for the duration that you have the gloves on. Your gloves are plastic, okay, and they accumulate just as many bacteria and everything that you touch as your hands would, okay? So think about that. And I know that managers, it's our job to, train our staff and make sure that these things don't happen. And we really have to keep an eagle's eye watch on these things. I have seen some crazy things when it comes to gloves. I've seen somebody try to wash their gloves or wash their hands with their gloves on or reuse gloves. We just want to make sure that this does not happen. Unfortunately, common sense is not common. Okay, so gloves, in my opinion, can be more dangerous than just not wearing gloves because people automatically think that their hands are clean when they have gloves on. So glove use is a very important topic to go over with your staff. Okay. Okay, moving on. So a lot of times for managers, there is not a lot of time to be out in the kitchen observing and looking at the big picture, right? So we're either in the weeds because one of our cooks has called out and we're, making 15 different things, hopefully in time for lunch, right? Or we're backed up on inventory or ordering or paperwork or just the daily fires we have to put out, right? So it's really important for us to make sure that we're doing some quick checks in our kitchens, okay? One thing that we really have to look at is employee cleanliness. Think again about going to a restaurant, okay? And remember that your restaurant has the same clientele 5 days a week, at least 2 meals a day. Okay. If you had to go to a restaurant 5 days a week, 2 meals a day, what would your expectations be? Not only of the facility, but of the staff. Okay. I would want them to be clean because if you walk into a restaurant and they kind of smell a little off or they put too much, perfume on, or their hair is a little, everywhere. They have long nails, you can see the dirt underneath them, or different things like that. It's not going to, really put a lot of trust in their ability to cook or deliver clean food. Right. And a lot of these things can be really touchy subjects to broach with your employees, especially if they smell. But it is something that is so important. Okay. Hair and nails, another super important topic. I always look at people's nails. If they're dirty, if they're jagged, I'm not eating anything they prepare. If they have long nails that are painted, I'm probably not going to eat anything because you can't see what's underneath there. And a lot of really gross things happen under fingernails, right? Your fingernails accumulate gunk from every single thing you touch throughout the day. Now, if you can recite back to me everything that you've touched today and how many times you've washed your hands and that you thoroughly cleaned up from under your fingernails, it's still a maybe for me, right? So making sure that your nails and your hands are clean is so important. The next thing is jewelry. Okay. Oh, I have very strong feelings about jewelry. First of all, I don't wear very much of it just because I can't keep up with it. Either it's in or it's non-existent, right? But just making sure that you don't have dangly earrings or a long necklace or lanyard that's going to dip into the food, or that, your bracelet or watch band or something, you're cleaning underneath it, you're cleaning it. And when I talk about bracelets, I'm talking about necessary bracelets, health bracelets or a watch. Those are industry standards. Okay. You don't want any sort of fashion jewelry, just because not only is it unsanitary, but it's dangerous. I've seen people break their wrists because their jewelry has gotten caught on a door handle in the kitchen. Okay. It's just not a pretty sight. The next thing is cups and food. It has been drilled into me from a very young age in the kitchen that eating and drinking in the middle of the kitchen during service is a no-go, right? It's going to be a huge beef with your health department if you do have improper drinking cups or food kind of laying around the kitchen squirreled away. So we always want to be on the lookout for this. You're probably going to have a designated area for your staff to eat, and we want to make sure that the staff food stays in that area. Okay, and this can be done quickly, just a once over in the kitchen and you're done. The next thing I want to talk about is the walk-in or reach-in coolers, whichever you have. They can quickly get out of hand. Okay. We want to do a quick check. When I was a manager, would do it every morning at the beginning of my shift and every afternoon at the end of my shift. So it's a quick check. You just want to walk through, look for like little things that are squirreled away, making sure things are labeled, making sure things are dated, making sure things are fully covered. Because remember when we talked about all the lovely things that float about in your walk-ins, right? Sweat and dandruff and pet hair and hopefully not sneezes, but probably sneezes. We want to talk about whatever else, but making sure that things are properly covered. Okay, because everything kind of settles and I don't want that in my food, right? So making sure that we're checking all that. It's a quick check. You don't have to spend an hour in the walk-in. You don't have to spend 20 minutes in the walk-in. You have to spend 5 minutes in the walk-in, right? The other thing is dish area. The dish area can also get out of hand really quickly. The little nooks and crevices that don't get cleaned every day can pile up and just be disgusting very quickly. So making sure that we're doing a quick once over, making sure that no pots are soaking overnight, right? Making sure no food is left in the bottom of your sinks or your disposal or your catch-all basket, and just making sure that these things are clean and tidy. The next thing is cross-contamination. Okay, I know we talked about the importance of not letting cross-contamination happen, but we have to be ultra vigilant when it comes to cross-contamination in your walk-in, in your dish area, in your prep area, in your serving area, in your employee areas, right? We have to make sure that everything is kept very separate, very clean and cleaned out very often. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Also temp checks. I know we talked about temperature, time and temperature before, but we have to do temp checks. Okay. If we're wanting to ensure as managers, as where the buck stops in the kitchen, that we are in control of our food, excuse me, production, we have to do temp checks. And I'll share here in just a second a temperature log that I love to use. But when I first walk in every single morning to a kitchens, I'm definitely checking the walk-in temperatures, right? The freezer walk-in and the cooler walk-in, making sure that they are up to temp. The last thing I want to do is get halfway through my day and realize that my walk-in has gone down, right? The next thing is hot box. Well, we want to just believe that it goes in the hot box and it's magically going to stay that temperature. We have to check it, okay? Especially if for those things like lasagna or different things that are going to set in the hot box for a little bit longer, that we're not batch cooking, okay? The salad bar is another huge deal. It's going to sit out for a long time, so we have to do temperature checks, making sure that it's not getting way out of that, way hot on that temperature danger zone, making sure that if you do have it under ice or something, or over ice rather, that we're doing a temp check just to make sure that it's staying cool, right? Okay. Milk cooler. Well, this is another one, right? Making sure that your milk is cold. Nobody likes warm milk, right? So even opening up a milk carton, sticking your thermometer in, or taking 2 milk cartons, smashing them together and putting your thermometer in the center of them, just to make sure that you're keeping it at temp, okay? There's nothing worse in the world than spoiled milk. Nothing, okay? Labeling. Labeling is another thing. We talked about this when we talked about checking our walk-ins, okay? But labeling can be your best friend. Okay, you always want to have prepared on dates. Okay, so you know that once it's 5 days out, you're throwing it out, right? And make sure everything's labeled so it's not mistaken for something else. Okay, and then there are a whole bunch of little things that we can check. Okay, drawers. Oh, drawers are a big one. That all that debris in the bottom of the drawers that just appears, right? The bottom of your hot boxes, do they need to be cleaned out? The bottom of your coolers, the walk-in floors, the walk-in shelving, can opener blades, all of these things have to be checked throughout the day. And then we want to have a plan for corrective action. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but we do need a plan to, hey, you know, we need to clean this, make your employees clean it, make sure they understand why they're cleaning and how to clean it, just so that we have a corrective action in place to make sure that these things stay safe, right? Adding these little things onto your cleaning schedule is another great way to do it, okay? Which, here we go, cleaning schedules. Oh, I do love a checklist. So we want to talk about the basics. Bathrooms, walk-ins, freezers, hot boxes, dish machines, serving lines. These are, again, just basics. They have to be done on a daily basis, okay? There are larger things that we'll get into here in a little bit that are bigger cleaning schedule tasks. But these things seem like basic things, right? I have the basics on here. But some of these things get overlooked so quickly. Freezers, walk-in floors, shelving, the bottom of your hot boxes, the rails in your hot boxes, the shelves in your ovens, different things like that, that we really just have to check on a daily basis to make sure that none of that is going to cross-contaminate our other food, okay? Okay. I love a good chart. So we're sharing this with you. It'll be in the links at the end of the webinar. But I do love this checklist because it has a date cleaned and then the initials of the person to clean this. And you can modify this. I usually like to make sure that my dates have at least 5 sections for each day of the week, right? When you initial it, and then you have a weekly schedule of things that have been cleaned, okay? So some of these are going to be cleaned every single day. Well, all of these are going to be cleaned every single day, right? But then we can also look at other things that need to be done every other week, once a month, different things like that. We'll get into that in just a minute. But this is from Iowa State University, and they have some really amazing templates that you all can use that are very, very helpful. This is just one of them. So we have a whole bunch of links that we'll share here in a little bit. Okay, so temperature check sheets. Why do we need them? Just as a recap, it's because we don't want to kill anybody, right? And we want to make sure that the food that we're serving is of the quality that we want to be serving and that we ourselves would want to eat, okay? Another reason temperature check sheets are so important is because when we're reheating things, we want to make sure that we get it to that 165 degrees for at least 15 seconds, right? Now, as managers, you can't be there every single second of every single day with every single employee. Am I right? So what are we going to do? We're going to have a check sheet, and you're going to review those at the end of the day or at the end of the week or every other day, just to make sure that your staff is doing what they need to do. Okay. Because then that gives you a little bit of leverage and knowledge about what should we be training, who should I be training, how often should I be training, and what do I really need to look at when I do my quick checks. Okay. So I want to real quickly talk about reheating, because what all do we reheat in that kitchen, right? We reheat almost everything. Chicken nuggets, shredded chicken, ground beef, stir-fried vegetables. All of these things are actually reheated because they're fully cooked, right? So it's so important for us to reach that 165 degrees for 15 seconds, okay? The next thing is ready to eat foods. Why is taking a temperature of tomatoes that you need to serve for your hamburger so important? Because tomatoes have one of the most perfect environments for bacteria to grow, okay? And a lot of produce or cold things have that delicious, moist, sugary, delicious, bacteria-loving just environment. And so you really need to take temperatures on that and log how much time it is holding or setting out on your salad bar or setting out unrefrigerated, just so we're not serving food that is compromised. The next thing is holding times. Okay. This is going to sound like it's coming more from a quality standpoint, but it is also a food safety standpoint. Okay. If you're going to make food for friends, how long are you going to let it set in the oven fully cooked until you serve it? You want to plan it out so it's the least amount of time possible, right? Why? Because it takes a lot of guesswork out of food safety and quality. I'm right, right? I'm right. Okay. So if we have things that are holding a long time in that hot box, there's more margin for error. So making sure that we do a temperature check sheet of everything that is in the hot box, and then between meal times, making sure that it's still at that temp, and making sure that we have a corrective action, which brings me to HACCP. For those of you who are not acquainted with HACCP, it stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. That sounds fancy. Okay, but really what it is if you go to take a temperature of your lasagna that's in your hot box that's been setting that you're going to use in a couple meal periods, and it's dropped into that temperature danger zone, what is your corrective action? Your corrective action, or your HACCP plan for that, is going to be put it back into the oven, reheat it to that 165 degrees for 15 seconds, and make sure that you're hitting that really well, and then putting it back in your hot box or on your serving line to serve, so it's not in that temperature danger zone, right? Okay, and we'll get into HACCP, I guess, right now, right? So this HACCP plan that I am presenting, these are really great slides from ICN, or the Institute for Child Nutrition. Again, so many great resources on this website. If you're looking for any sort of template or any sort of training plan, ICN is one of the best resources. Okay, so we're going to talk about HACCP. Okay, It is a preventative maintenance plan. So like we talked about, hazard analysis, critical control points. So we want to identify what that critical control point is, which for the lasagna that we were talking about, it's slipping into that temperature danger zone, so that 135 or below, right? Okay, and what are we going to do about it? Okay, so then it's reheated. Okay, so here is a maintenance plan for some of your large equipment. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're cleaning it weekly, 3 months, 6 months, yearly. We want to make sure that we have a vendors list, so if something does go wrong, we know who to call, right? Okay, and then we want to have any notes there that, you know, if I'm not there and the building's burning down, not literally, but figuratively, what does somebody need to do, right? And this is using hazard analysis critical control points to correct the issue, okay? So say your refrigerator, you find you have a report of foodborne illness, right? Well, I can say we've cleaned it out, you know, weekly or daily, and here's our vendor list, and we had it checked on this date, and we had coils cleaned, and you know, all this sheet is for that, right? It's a cover your back sheet to make sure that you have the proper documentation so you can prove that you guys did nothing wrong. Okay, so let's talk about, let's see here, your milk cooler. Okay, your milk cooler breaks down. Well, okay, I know exactly what to do because here's my vendor list and here's who I call. Okay, this is all part of HACCP. It doesn't just have to pertain to food. Okay. Okay, so then HACCP as it pertains to your vendor food safety list. Okay, so we want to have a food safety plan. Okay, hazard analysis critical control points. What is your critical control point when receiving food? Okay, your critical control point when receiving milk is if it's in the temperature danger zone. You don't want to receive it if it's out of temperature. Okay, so what do I do now? We go to our food vendor and we say, we're not accepting this, you know, we have exact steps that we take to make sure that we don't accept compromised food and that we're getting the food that we need for that. Okay, so as it pertains to your vendor, we have a food safety plan for if things go wrong. Okay, we look at their inspections, see what their issues are, and they have to post these. They have to give them to you. And it's really interesting if you need a good read to read through some of these. Okay, and they have to allow for inspection in their facility. Okay, so you can actually physically go and visit their facilities to make sure that everything is in good order. Also, they have to let the health department in if you call if something is wrong. And this should all be part of your HACCP plan. Okay, so we have to have district-wide policies when it comes to these. Okay, so we have to have policies for purchasing, as far as purchasing from vendors with good reputations, that you read their reports of their facility cleanliness. We have to have one for leftover use. Okay, if we have leftovers, how are we going to use them? How long are we going to wait to use them? We need to heat it to 165 degrees for 15 seconds. This is all HACCP. Okay, uniforms, they have to be cleaned every day. If it's not cleaned, what are you going to do? That's a HACCP critical control point. Okay, training, shared services, and then your version of your food code, which you'll get from your health department, right? All of this fits into your HACCP plan just to make sure that you have a plan for whatever may be thrown at you, right? Whatever goes wrong, you have a plan for that. Okay, so how do we develop a HACCP plan? Okay, it's a lot of documentation, which is not always our favorite thing to do, but it is a necessary item on this list. Okay, so we have to have standard operating procedures, and that standard operating procedure is making sure that we're filling out temperature logs, making sure that if something is wrong, that we're correcting that. That is a standard operating procedure. Okay, And then we need to identify and document all menu items. So having recipes, this is another reason that recipes are so important. And a lot of your recipes that you'll get from USDA or Cooking for Kids or other resources will have kind of a HACCP component to it. And that HACCP component could be heat to 135 degrees if it's fresh vegetables that are held hot for service. Or if you're reheating this item like a ground beef that is pre-cooked, heating it to 165 degrees for 15 seconds, okay? And then establish monitoring procedures. So having a key person in your kitchen, making sure that they are monitoring and filling out these logs, right? Okay. And then establishing corrective actions. What are you going to do when things go wrong? Okay. And that is all part of HACCP. I know I've been beating this into you for the past 5 minutes. Sorry. Keeping recipes and then always reviewing them and revising them. Okay. I know over this past year, we've used a lot of products that we haven't used in the past. And so we'd have to evaluate those items and come up with new kind of critical control points and corrective actions for those points. Okay. Any questions about that? Please, jump right in if you have questions. I know this is a really dry topic. So let me know. Let me know if you need something. Okay. So there are 3 categories that we really want to focus our HACCP plan on: no cook or ready to eat products, sandwiches, fresh cut vegetables, salad bar, different things like this. Okay. We want to make sure that we identify the temperature danger zone for each of those things. Okay. And that we know exactly what foods those are. Okay. Then our next one is same day service. Okay. Which means that it's going to be cooked and eaten right away. And then complex means it goes through 2 or more cooking phases. So that means chili would be a complex cooking method, because if we're starting with raw beef, we're going to cook that raw beef and it has its own critical control points and corrective actions that we're going to have to maintain. Okay. And then we're going to add the beans and the tomatoes and everything else. And that's a second cooking method that we're using. So that's a great example of a complex cooking method. Okay. So finally, we're hitting critical control points again. Am I right? I know it's long-winded. I'm sorry. It's a dry topic. We're going to make this as fun as possible. Okay. So your critical control point is a key point to prevent or eliminate the threat of foodborne illness. Okay. It is that point in which you realize something is wrong and that you correct that thing that is wrong. Okay. And then a critical limit, which is just a little bit different, is what we need to get it up to make sure that we're getting or circumventing that critical control point. Okay. I'm just going to quickly go through these because I'm running out of time. Sorry, I'm getting long-winded. Okay. So control measures for no cook, or like a fruit salad. Okay. You're receiving, you're storing, your preparation, your cold holding is your critical control point. Right? So making sure that you're holding it at 41 degrees or below and you're checking and recording that temperature. Okay, so that is your critical control point, because that's the point in which the most bacteria can grow in that dish. Does that make sense? Okay, so same day service. Your critical control point is going to be that cook and then that hot hold, like we've been talking about. Okay, so your chicken, if it's chicken, it's baked chicken, which is comes to already cooked, you want to make sure that you're doing that 165 degrees for 15 seconds. And then your second critical control point is going to be that hot hold and making sure that it does not go below 135 degrees, right? And that's why taking those temperatures in those hot boxes is so important. Okay. And then for your complex cooking method, we have a whole bunch of critical control points here. Okay. So if you're preparing it over 2 days or 2 different cooking methods, or you're doing well, this is a beef and bean tamale, so it would be done over a couple days, but we're cooking the beef. We want to make sure that we hold it at 165 degrees for 15 seconds. We want to cool it appropriately. So it needs to get below 70 degrees within 2 hours and then below 41 degrees within 4 hours. And then we have the next day, which is the reheating method. So 165 degrees for 15 seconds, and then you're holding it hot. So we have 4 critical control points. So we really have to monitor there. Might seem like common sense, not too common, right? Okay, we're going to change gears now that I've talked your ear off about HACCP. Okay, we're going to talk about the big picture items for your kitchen that you don't run into maybe every day. Or if we're running into them every day, we're not deep cleaning them every day. Okay, so equipment cleaning and maintenance. And I think this is so important, not just from a food safety standpoint, but also because our equipment that we use is so expensive, right? We don't want to have to replace it every 5 years, right? Because we just don't have the money. So let's talk about a couple things. Now, one of my favorite ways to do this is make a list of everything that needs to be done. And if you have staff members working over the summer or during a break or something, then they get to do some of these things, but some of these things really do need to be done by a maintenance person. Okay. The first thing has to be done by a maintenance person. I have never actually done the cleaning of the coils on a walk-in cooler or freezer. Okay. You have to kind of take some things apart to get to these coils. And I don't want to be responsible for that. Okay. But your freestanding coolers and freezers, you can easily find the coils. They're either on the top of the machine or underneath. And you just want to brush all the dust. I have a picture here in just a little bit. You know, I love my pictures to show you about that. So we'll quickly run through these that I don't have pictures, or that I do have pictures for, and we'll get a little more in depth for the ones I don't have pictures. Okay, display equipment. Now that's your serving line. Okay, are we cleaning that glass every day or at least once a week? Probably, but what about the metal pieces and the nitty gritty where things come together in those little tiny crevices? We want to make sure that we're getting all down in there. Okay. Gaskets, I have a picture to show you, so don't fear. But we want to make sure that they're fully secured. There's no mold growing in between them. Dish machines is another thing. I know a lot of you all are so diligent about deliming your dish machines. But those of you who aren't, we have some solutions. I have some pictures. Okay. Ice machines. I have a picture, so don't worry, but these have to be cleaned out. Oh my gosh. When I show you this picture, when I was putting this together, it made me nauseated. Ooh, it was terrible. Hoods, you usually have a company that comes in and cleans your hoods, but you can do it yourself, you know, as you see that it is needed with a wet cloth, or you can take them down and run them through your dishwasher, depending on what kind of hood you have. Steamers and combi ovens, you have to delime these as well, right? Depending on your water source, you can have a lot of scale buildup, the lime scale buildup, and that not only just looks terrible, but it can flake off into your food and just be disgusting. Okay, ovens should be clean. Don't worry, I have a picture. Ovens can get so disgusting so quickly, and it's just so important to get an oven cleaner or even soap and water and just scrub those down. Can openers, ooh. This one year I got some Petri dishes and I swabbed a can opener blade and put it on it was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. Okay, think about it. How many times a year do we clean that blade, and how well do we clean it, and how many different foods does it touch? And it sets out in that temperature danger zone, and it has food on it, and it builds up, and it's all crusty and disgusting. Don't get me started. Okay. Floor drains can be another huge smelly thing that can make your kitchen disgusting. We want to make sure that we're taking out those grates and scrubbing them down. Shelving, another thing. I love to take the shelving out right before summer break, spray it down, scrub it down, making sure it's so clean. Just because, again, everything that's floating through the walk-in attaches to those shelves, and that bacteria is real. And then handles, everything that has a handle should be cleaned, in my opinion, daily, if not multiple times a day. Okay, phones, walk-ins, bathroom doors, everything. Okay. So here's some lovely pictures. Floor drains. This is disgusting. You need to get a big brush and just scrub that out. That can get really very smelly. Okay, it can be the source of a lot of rank smells. Okay, there are your cooler coils. Now this obviously has not been cleaned, but this buildup can happen so quickly because those coils get everything, all the air that's being sucked in from the outside has a lot of dust in it. It's going to accumulate on those coils. This can start fires. It will cut the life expectancy of your equipment in half. Also, if something happens and you have a big piece of lint or dust floating through the kitchen, that can be a disgusting contaminant. Not that all contaminants are disgusting, but especially disgusting contaminant for food. Okay. Dish machines and the scoops. This is the inside of a dish machine, or an ice machine. Okay, you would be shocked at how many ice machines look like this. This is not actually the worst one I've ever seen. This is disgusting because it is a constant moist environment, and because it frosts and defrosts so much, mold can thrive in that. So turning off your dish machine, making sure you get all the ice out of there, all the liquid drained out, and then scrubbing it down is so important. Okay. I am very picky about the ice that I will, eat from certain restaurants, right? Okay. It's not okay. This is one of the worst things. I hate ice machines. Okay. Gaskets. This is what a lot of gaskets look like. In all honesty, they're cracked. And what happens if your gaskets aren't up to par is, first of all, the plastic can get into the food that you're preparing or storing in there. Okay. And it won't cause a nice strong seal in your cooler. So then you have the risk of time and temperature. You're going to burn out your motor. It's going to be a bad deal. So gaskets usually are not that expensive, and it's worth replacing all of them. Hoods, again, it's a vent system, so it sucks air out and puts air in, and so you're having a lot of contaminants in the air go through there. And once again, it also sweats sometimes, and that liquid can drop into your food. So just making sure, it's as clean as possible is important. Ovens, we kind of already talked about this, right? Getting in there with soap and water and a scrub brush is key. Dishwashers, making sure that we delime them either with vinegar or a delimer each week is so important. Okay. And then combi ovens and steamers, the lime buildup on this is totally real, and it will kill your machine, and those machines are expensive. Okay, here is a resource we're going to share with you. I know I'm rushing through this. I don't want to take up more of your day than I have to, but we'll share this resource. It has what to clean, recommended cleaning frequency, and then exactly how to clean it. And this is an amazing resource, so that it takes out all the guesswork in trying to maintain the longevity of your machines, and then also make sure that they are as clean as possible. Okay. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you have any questions, let me know. But we do have this QR code for the post survey. And if you have any questions about how to use the QR code, I'll explain it in just a second. But Cass will also put a link in the chat box for those of you who don't want to use the QR code. How you use the QR code is you just take your cell phone and you turn on your camera and you point it directly at the QR code. A link will come up. You just click on it and it'll take you through the internet to the survey. Okay. Okay. Any questions for me? None? I am that good that you guys don't have any questions. I know that it was a lot of information to take in, and that it is a very dry subject. So thanks for hanging in there with me. It is so necessary, and it's so important to talk about. It's a lot, right? You are very welcome. I love doing these webinars. They're so fun for me. I like spending time with you guys and hearing your questions and learning from you guys. is one of the highlights of my job. So thank you so much for hanging out. Bill's gonna go clean his oven. I had to clean a lot of things after doing preparing this PowerPoint. I was like getting into crevices with like, little tiny tweezers and getting things out. Oh, it just grosses me out. Oh yes, don't forget if you're watching in a group to email Cass. Okay, and her email is just posted in the comments, but email Cass the list of names of people who you watched it with so we can get certificates out. Okay, the certificates are going to take a couple of days to get out, and then this webinar will also be posted on our website if you need other people to watch it, hopefully by the end of this week, first part of next week, to get that out of the way. Okay. Okay.